Let's take our Bibles and open to the book of Revelation, and we find ourselves in chapter 12 this morning. Some of you are wired in such a way that my lectern pulpit thing not being in line with the table and out of line with the center of the room, is that going to irritate you? I'll just stay here if it's not. If you're able to concentrate, well, okay. It bothers me, but I'll get over it. Hey, I appreciate your prayers for the next 2 Sundays. I'll be traveling and going over to South Africa for Bethesda Outreach Ministries board meeting. There'll be about 2.5 days of board meetings, and then 2 weeks from this morning, I get to preach at Central Baptist Church in Pretoria. They have 2 campuses, 2 services. And then later that day, fly home. So it'll be a busy day. Appreciate your prayers that just basically that I would be, I'd stay out of trouble, find my way through the travel and so forth, and that I'd be a blessing to the folks there at both at Bethesda and at Central Baptist Church. Hey, we come to Revelation chapter 12 this morning, and we want to bite off another chunk on our survey of our flyover of this book, Revelation 12 through 14. And it's under the rubric or the question of what is really going on. It fits within the context, but the question of all the judgments that are going on, of all of the things that are happening on earth and in heaven, what is really going on behind the scenes of destruction, of dysfunction, of death that seems to really reign, totally on this planet. Whether it's the massive destruction of a hurricane or the numbing pain of brokenness experienced in our personal lives, we most likely can't see life as clearly as we should see it or as clearly as we need to. You want to take a few minutes and just get into an argument, get into a controlled discussion about are hurricanes caused by climate change? Let's talk about that for a few minutes, all right? And you guys are laughing like I already know almost where you would position yourself. But yet in our culture and in our lives personally, go ahead and answer the question clearly and with confidence. What's behind that hurricane? What's its purpose? Where did it come from? Is it a natural phenomenon? Is it just a mixture of winds and the movement of the earth and stars and so forth? Well, it is, I think, that's a very inadequate scientific description, but it is, some of it can be explained in that way. Explain what happened to you this past week. Explain the rhythms of your whole life. And we need to come to a point where, at least according to the Scriptures, where we're able to answer the question, what is really going on, without being, the passage does it so well. The passage says, we're going to get there in a moment, it's going to say, hey, once you see what's really going on, be wise. Calculate. And that's where we're headed today. It's a math lesson, folks. Is how can we really know what's going on and still stay in the present? Still stay in what is going on here in my real life, but yet knowing what's behind the curtains, how can we do that? And it's part of what we're going to see today as we sort of travel through. With John, we've been looking behind the curtain. Revelation has helped us see and understand life, both past, present, and future, in quite a sobering way. Victory in Jesus means that we can and must be aware of what is really going on around us, sort of at several levels. What's going on in front of me right now, what are my responsibilities in this life, and then how it's impacted by what I know what's going on behind the curtain. I just know it, because the Bible says that this is what's happening. So a bit of context, Jesus invited John into a series of visions. John was told to write what he saw and send it to the churches. We heard Jesus' assessment of the churches back in chapters 2 and 3, his admonition to us, wake up, repent, hold on. We've seen the worship and the majesty of the throne room of heaven. We watched as the Lamb who was slain came over and took the sealed scroll from the hand of the one seated on the throne. He opened up the seals of judgments on mankind. Yes, we found out the Lamb is worthy. The Lamb is worthy to have complete control of all things. Yes, those who are redeemed by the blood of the slain Lamb, they will stand in the end. We then followed John as he helped us see these 7 angels who had 7 trumpets, and they blew their trumpets of judgment on the judgments of God on earth dwellers. And we saw those repeatedly. God is acting toward earth dwellers, mankind, to mercifully call them to repentance and faith. I don't know if it struck you as much last week. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on it, but just the jaw-dropping wonder as the angel is given the key to the abyss, and the abyss is opened, the bottomless pit, and clouds of hordes of demon-like, scorpion-like creatures, in so many that you can't even see. It darkens the sky. And out they come, released into history to destroy, to torment, to kill a portion of mankind. What's behind all of this? What's behind all of the death and destruction in our world? And so we're going to ask the question and try to see how God answers it here in Revelation. What is really going on? He describes now in several visions what's going on. The 7 trumpets, the 7th trumpet has sounded. Out of the 7th trumpet is going to come the next series of 7 judgments, and those are the bowls, and they'll happen in a week or two. Well, it's going to be on, we're going to pick this back up again in November, Lord willing. But what we see here is sort of an interlude between these judgments of what what is really going on. Well, life has been, life is right now, and it will be until God judges. It will be a war. God, the day is coming, we'll see it in our visions today, where God unleashes his wrath on the destroyer and all who are loyal to him. This vision, this series of visions, describes a horrific war. And those of us who've hung around church for a while, we tend to think that this is a war that's only going to happen in the future. And I would agree with you. That there's going to be an unveiling and unleashing, but that there's also, as we've seen in all of these visions, there is a now and a then. This is happening now. It's going to get progressively greater, more obvious. But these visions in 12 through 14 describe the horrific war of deceit that both attacks us, the church, and then demands our persistent endurance and our persistent wisdom that's found only in Jesus. The passage of Scripture that really is the backdrop for these 3 chapters in Revelation is this one. We'll see it on the screen. Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3 in verse 15. Some of you remember the context of it. Adam and Eve have been created. They've been put into this perfect environment. They sin. They turn against God. The serpent has entered in. And now this is God giving his curse on Adam, on Eve, on humanity, as well as on the serpent. And so he says to the serpent, to the devil, we'll see it in our passage today, I will put enmity, that's hatred, that's hostility. I will put enmity between you, serpent, and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. You and I just got brought into the Scriptures under that term offspring, right? To your offspring and hers. In other words, now there's 2 teams. There's serpent team and woman team. And that's how the Bible opens up, with these 2 groups. He, the offspring of the woman, will bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. So there's a fight. On the playground of the universe, there's a fight. There's a war going on. And that's the backdrop. That's a major theme throughout all of the Scripture, is this promise. If you ever are asked the question, what in the world is the Bible about? Well, there's a number of good answers to that. It's about God. It's about Jesus. But the main theme of the Bible is the word promise. It goes right from here. Right in chapter 1 and 2, we're promised this incredible, holy, beautiful, perfect, fun relationship with God. It is broken. Here's the next promise. That the one from the seed of the woman is going to defeat the serpent, and it's all going to be restored. Promise, all the way through the Bible. So what's really going on? Let's look at these signs and visions. Let's start in chapter 12. First of all, in chapter 12, we find that in heaven, the scene is in heaven, Satan has been defeated and kicked out. Will you follow as I read in Revelation chapter 12? And we pick it right up with incredible language. Turn your imaginations on. Ask God to help you see these things before we start asking the questions of what they mean. Because they're supposed to impress us, and then we talk about what they mean. A great sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant, and she was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. And another sign, that sign, that's the first picture, you got it? Another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his head 7 diadems. This is a complex system. A lot of heads just simply means there's authority and there's activity that is headed, agendas that are headed in several different ways. His tail, this red dragon's tail, swept down 1/3 of the stars of heaven, cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child, he might devour it. We have to just stop and let that sink in, right? Right now is not a good time to take a phone call. I mean, you want to finish this one, right? You've got this dragon. You've seen it. You've heard it. Verse 5. She gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. In other words, this is the child of promise. This may be. In other words, if we're reading from Genesis through to Revelation, we might think, wow, I underlined something back in Genesis 3 about 7 years ago when I started. I wonder if this is the one born from the woman's offspring. And you would be right if you were saying that. But her child was caught up to God and to his throne, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. Now, war arose in heaven. Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven, and the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan. There he is. See how the text interprets itself? In other words, we're wondering, who's this red dragon? I wonder who the red dragon is. And right in the text tells us, the red dragon is the devil. The red dragon is the ancient serpent. All the way back from the beginning of the Bible. The deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. They have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they love not their lives even unto death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea. Here it comes. Woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you, in great wrath because he knows that his time is short. Get the picture. Understand, in reality, this vision, these signs that John has is sort of like a paradigm. It's a model, it's a concept, it's a template of how we view life, of how history happens, both globally and personally. A child of promise is born. Satan tries to stop the child of promise from being born, and not from being born, but once born, to kill the child of promise. Satan loses the war of heaven when the son of promise dies, raises again, and ascends into heaven. Then there's no more room. Victory has been accomplished. There's no more room for the adversary, the serpent, in heaven. Satan is expelled from heaven to make war on the offspring of God's people. Note, our world, our families, our church, our individual lives are in a war. Our enemy is identified and described. The deceiver is real. The deceiver is limited. The deceiver is furious. The deceiver is focused. We are the woman in this vision. In other words, as we would identify ourselves as Jesus followers, as people of God in general, as a group of the people of God that would identify with Old Testament saints, New Testament saints, and so forth. We are the woman who has been and is being protected, tested, disciplined in the wilderness, as the text says, of this historical season that we live in. We're the offspring of the woman who the devil is furious with, and he's making war against because of our obedient love for God, our public testimony that Jesus is Lord. So Satan has brought the battle to us. That's the vision. Throughout all of history, what is behind the scenes? Part of what is behind the scenes is that Satan is angry. Satan is bringing the battle. The same, what happened, what started in the garden is continuing through today. As limited as he is still incredibly active. So yes, the devil has been defeated, but watch out. You'll notice in verse 14, the devil has come down to you in great wrath because he knows that his time is short. Will that happen in a concentrated effort in the future? More so? Yes. Is it now? Man alive, all we have to do is read our Bibles and know, right? That we live in a war. It's just not the things, and we'll see it in a passage in just a moment. Notice in verse 17 of chapter 12. Then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring. On those, and who are the offspring? Those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. And he stood on the sand of the sea. So the devil's been defeated, but watch out. He is really furiously involved in attacking the sons and daughters of the woman. Those who, as is described in verse 17. Notice that let's move to chapter 13. We move from heaven where the devil has been kicked out. God is in control. The sacrifice of Jesus has been accepted. And now we move to earth in this next vision. Follow as I read. And I saw a beast, chapter 13, rising out of the sea. And again, notice the beast, very complex, very powerful, all kinds of authority, really impressive. 10 horns, 7 heads, 10 diadems on its horns, and blasphemous names on its heads. Think this way with me on these things. I would encourage you to. It's something that you really have a hard time taking your eyes off from, right? I mean, if you were to see something rising out of the sea, if you were to see a red dragon, there's 10 of these, 7 of these, diadems all over the place, and then, read, and it's so just mesmerizing. It'd be hard to put that in your rearview mirror and just continue on as if it didn't exist. Draws attention, very attractive. And the beast, verse 2, that I saw was like a leopard, its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. Pretty impressive. And to it, the dragon. Now here, remember, insert who the dragon is, gave his power and his throne and great authority. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed. And the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. And they worshiped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast. Now wait a minute, you remember the various scenes of heaven that we've already enjoyed? Where the redeemed are gathered, the 24 elders are there on their thrones, there's the 4 living creatures, there's the one who is seated on the throne, then there's the lamb that was slain, and the elders are crying out, the angels are crying out. What are they crying out? Do you remember? What are they singing? They're singing, "Worthy is the Lamb." They're singing, "Holy, holy, holy." It never stops. And now, the beast, the one who was given authority by the dragon, has so enamored, so enthralled the whole earth that they worship the dragon. Now listen to their song. The dragon and the beast and the loyalists of the dragon and the beast have their own music. Now don't get me wrong, it's not rock and roll. That was 25 years ago, okay? Or longer. But they do have their music. They do have their song. Who is like the beast and who can fight against it? See, if we minimize, but for a moment, the loyalty that can be built up inside of us and built up in all kinds of our neighbors and family members, the loyalty to this world system and what it promises and how it articulates itself. Don't minimize it. The angel says, "Here, let me give you a vision of your life right now." Everybody is a worshiper. It just matters. Sometimes you sing both songs, but you're going to have to come to a point where you're going to have to pick your song. That's the point of this vision. Verse 5, the beast was given a mouth, uttering haughty and blasphemous words. And it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. You understand what blasphemous is? Blasphemous is against God, mocking God, taking the obvious ways that God has made us and God has loved us and God has helped us and God has provided for us and turning right back in His face and telling Him He doesn't exist. We're going to do it our way. Does any of that sound familiar? Do any of you live in a world like that? Where not only do we just implicitly say there is a God, but I'm not going to follow Him, we explicitly mock Him, dare Him, right? That's the world we live in. That's the world that He's describing. Is it going to get worse? Yes. It was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming His name and His dwelling. That is, those who dwell in heaven. And it was allowed, it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. Boy, that's confusing. And authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation, and all who dwell on earth will worship it. Everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. And this is sort of like the caption at the bottom of the picture of this age, of this beast and the dragon. And there's a second beast coming. But if anyone has an ear, let him hear. If anyone's to be taken captive, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be slain with the sword he must be slain. You still want to join the church? That's the caption. You live in this world, you're going to have to declare your loyalty. If you don't declare your loyalty, or if you're casual about declaring your loyalty, then watch out. Here is a call, verse 10, for the endurance and the faith of the saints. Verse 14, we're not going to take the time to read about the second beast. It's a lot of similarities, but verse 14, the second beast who rises out of the earth is more of a false teaching, more of a deceiver. And by the signs that it is allowed to work, verse 14, and in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on earth, telling them to make an image of the beast that was wounded by the sword and yet lived. Picture the template of how to see life clearly. Just on the other side of what we see and on the other side of what we experience is both God at work in Christ by His Word, by the power of His Spirit to transform lives, but also just beyond is not only God at work, but it is the massive work of the unholy Trinity. Pictured in these visions of the dragon, the beast from the sea, beast from the earth. I'm foolish enough to want to trivialize it and say beast number one, beast number two. But don't dare talk about them like they're some comic book figures. This vision of the introduction of the two beasts describes the limited but yet powerful war on earth against both the offspring of the woman, those faithful to the Son of Promise, and the earth dwellers. Beast number one is described as a system of Satan-backed deception and idolatry that exposes itself on multiple fronts in various ways in everyday human systems, activities, and relationships. Beast number two is described as a false system mimicking the Son of Promise, the Lamb who was slain, to draw the inhabitants of earth to worship the dragon. In other words, these two beasts, multiple heads, big tail, crowns, multiple horns, all kinds of authority. Is there such a thing as this world system that is entirely backed, empowered by, and agendaed by these characters? I think that's what he's saying. Government, education, academia, business, medicine, science, media, entertainment, religion. What's behind them? Now, a lot of good's behind them because the image of God has not been totally eradicated, has it? But yet for us to think that there's not something more serious, there's not another agenda that's going on. We dare not take the time, but it would be very profitable to go back to Revelation chapter 2 and chapter 3 and find out how many times in very practical and real ways each church who were real people at the time of the writing of Revelation were warned about Satan. You remember the expression he said to a couple of the churches, you know where you guys live? You live in the, do you remember it? The synagogue of Satan. At least two churches he said that to. He said Satan is the one, by the way. You remember Antipas who died? Antipas, my faithful witness, who was killed among you, and here's what he said, where Satan dwells. Wait a minute. Satan, we're not supposed to get serious about Satan until the second half of the tribulation, are we? Aren't we okay till then? Didn't Jesus take care of all this stuff? And here in these visions already we've found that yes, Jesus did. Man, when the risen Christ ascended and showed up in heaven and was seated at the right hand of the Father, who had to leave? Out went the devil. Where did he go? For a period of time he comes to this earth. This is where he dwells. And now we're learning that he not only dwells, he has a staff. All right? And the staff include the two beasts who perform and who act out this incredible system all around us that are after those who have claimed Christ. And to keep in absolute cloudy, deceived darkness the earth dwellers. The war on the saints is described as deadly. It really does. To the original readers of the book, right now they're scratching their chins and they're saying, oh, that explains why so many of my family and so many of my friends and so many of my friends at church have been killed by our government because they wouldn't say no to Jesus. They wouldn't take on the brand of being a loyalist to the beast, to our governor who at that time to our ruler who at that time was saying it's either us or it's Jesus. Which one? Oh man, this explains so much. The issue of loyalty. You'll notice in chapter 13, verses 7 to 10, that whole, it was allowed for the beast to do war against the saints and to conquer them. That's persecution, by the way. That's martyrdom. It explains it. It explains to the original readers of Revelation, it explains to believers throughout history and now into the future. It's the issue of loyalty. And then notice verse 17. And this is one of our favorite parts of Revelation to sort of throw around at each other. So that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. This is not something that's going to be injected in your arm or your shoulder. This is not something that's going to be tattooed on your forehead so that it's not something that's going to invade your credit card. It's none of those. There's nothing in the text that even hints about that. You know what the text is saying? It's loyalty, folks. You're going to wear the brand of following Jesus, or you're going to wear the brand of being a loyalist to the world system. Where is it that you're going to worship? What song are you going to sing? How are you going to be distinctive? Your casualness, your apathy, all of that adds up. That's the mark. The mark is, I am loyal to. I won't die for Jesus. I love Him, though. I won't die for Him. I believe in Him, but I won't die for Him. I believe in Him, but I won't live for Him. I believe in Him, but I won't let my life be marked by the exclusive, unique demands that He teaches. Well, then you just didn't take His mark. You see. Go ahead, take the mark of the world. It's the mark of a man. Man is man. Mankind, earth dwellers, those who reject Christ, those who live their lives like that. So note that war on the earth dwellers is described as deceit. So life is seen as a war. It's a war of and for loyalty. Who and what will we worship? The enemy is powerful. The enemy attacks with authority, with deceit, with subtlety and false promises. The enemy attacks the weakest among us. The saints seem to be in so many ways on the losing side. That's what's going on. So here, heed the warnings. In chapter 13, verse 10, here's a call for endurance. Here's a call for faith, folks. And then verse 18, here's a call for wisdom. So it's in this vision that we are the ones who refuse to sing the songs of the dragon. We die for our loyalty to Christ, and we encourage each other to endure for the sake of the Lamb who was slain. We wisely wear and live the brand of Jesus, our captain. By the way, folks, don't give up. That's what it's saying to you. All right? Are you a little wore out trying to parent in this world today? Are you a little wore out trying to just live some kind of a godly day-by-day life? Have you given up on trying to be outstandingly known for being branded by Jesus? Have you sort of sunk back into the ways of the world and you're very comfortable being just like them while you say, but I prayed a prayer and I know I'm a Christian. Watch out. Pull the curtain back and you're not going to see something pretty. You're going to see a red dragon who is poised to destroy you. You're going to see two beasts who have this incredibly well-financed, multiple heads, multiple departments, multiple nations, and it's a very well-conceived plan to just keep you off your game and to take you away from Jesus. Paul writes the church at Ephesus these words to describe what is going on. Do you remember them? Let me give them to you. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of His might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. We wrestle, though, don't we? We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers, all the heads, all the crowns, over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. So what's going on? In heaven, Satan has been defeated and kicked out. On earth, Satan is deceiving and killing. And now the vision in chapter 14 goes to Mount Zion, the house of God. So in God's house, the redeemed are safe, and the destroyer is judged. Now, 14, what this vision helps us with as we're trying to stay in context, we're trying to keep the momentum going. The dragon and the woman, the son of promise, Satan comes to earth, the incredible battle on earth for the songs of Satan. And now we ask the question, I'm a little bothered in that last vision, I'm a little bothered by the incredible power that the two beasts empowered by the dragon have to conquer the saints. Right? Isn't that one of the first questions we all want to ask in discussions like this? But I thought I was saved. I thought the devil couldn't get to me. I thought he couldn't. And you're right. But it all depends on what you mean. He can't get to me. Could it be possible that every day you are put in a place of decision making where you're either going to decide to go His way, live your life His way, or live your life your way? And could that amp up to the point where it would come to where if you don't turn from Jesus, we will kill you? You understand that's happening to our brothers and sisters all around the world right now. All right? You say, but I didn't sign up for that. I signed up to have my sins forgiven when I die so that I can go to heaven. That's what I signed up for. Right? You signed up for the gospel of the second beast. That's what that is. It's close, but excuse my finishing, you know where it's coming. You don't get a cigar, all right? It's close, but it's not the real thing. It's the gospel of the second beast. It's the gospel of prosperity. It's the gospel of all that we hear around us in both formalized religion and sort of off-the-cuff religion where the guys fly the jets. And the formal religion where the guys wear funny uniforms and hardly come out of their rooms. It's all from the second beast. So what happens to those lamb loyalists, those slain lamb loyalists who are momentarily conquered? Verses 1 through 5, oh, beautiful. And isn't it great that God, by His grace, gives us these pictures every once in a while, multiplied times throughout this vision of Revelation. It says, then I looked, and behold, on Mount Zion. Mount Zion is simply the place of God, the house of God, and we'll see later. And on Mount Zion, there He is. You see the next three words? Wow, there He is. On Mount Zion stood the Lamb, and with Him 144,000, that complete number who had His name and His Father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven like the roar of many waters and like the sound of loud thunders. The voice I heard was like the sound of harpists playing on their harps. And they were singing a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and before the elders. There's that scene again. It ought to bring us comfort. No one could learn that song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. It is these who have not defiled themselves with women, for their virgins. It is these who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These have been redeemed from mankind as first fruits for God and the Lamb, and in their mouth no lie was found, for they are blameless. That's a pretty odd description of Christians, isn't it? But yet you put it against the backdrop of the agenda of the dragon, beast, and beast, who is all about sexual immorality. The wrath of God described in Romans chapter 1 is against those who take the very way that we've been created and turn it around in their sexual fulfillment. And so this description is just those who are followers of Christ. And then let me just review the rest of the chapter as we need to conclude. We then see three angels in essentially verses 6 through 12, 13. The angels, each of them, give a response to the dragon, beast, and beast agenda. All right, angel number 1, you'll notice in verse number 8, they fly over with gospel proclamation. They have an eternal gospel to proclaim to those who dwell on earth, to the same neighborhoods that the beasts are after. Nation, tribe, language, and people. You can see that back in chapters 12 and 13. Verse 8 is angel number 2. Angel number 2 comes along and announces Babylon, the dragon empowered world system has fallen. And you notice that they made all nations drink the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality. That helps us understand the description of the believers earlier in verses 1 through 5. Verse 9 through 11, angel number 3. Another angel, a third, followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and its image and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, loyalty, it's all about loyalty. Saving faith is all about loyalty. It's a grace-infused, a grace-empowered loyalty. If anyone receives a mark on the forehead or on his hand, he also will drink the wine of God's wrath, poured full strength into the cup of his anger. And you're remembering the pronoun now. He is who? God. Is he out of control or what? He will be tormented. This he is the one that the wrath is being poured out on. He, the one who receives the mark on his forehead, he, the one who worships the beast and its image, will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. They have no rest day or night. These worshipers of the beast and its image, and whoever receives the mark of its name. And so we have the judgment of God. Verses 12 through 13, here comes this voice. Here's a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. And I heard a voice from heaven saying, what an incredible voice, write this, blessed are the dead. You're wondering what's happening to those who are dying at persecution. You're wondering about those who are in martyrdom. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Blessed indeed, says the Spirit. You get a little conversation going on between this voice and then the Spirit answers that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them. Incredibly blessed. Where those who have the mark of the beast and those who are judged by the wrath of God, they have no rest for day and night, forever and ever. And here he says, blessed are those. They will not only have rest, but they will be rewarded. And then the last part of the vision John says in verse 14, I looked and I behold a white cloud seated on the cloud, one like a son of man. Gold crowned on his head, sharp sickle in his hand. And then verse 17, another angel came out of the temple in heaven. He too had a sharp sickle. Some of you remember, some of you have used sickles, haven't you? Is a sickle and a scythe the same? I mean, I remember my grandpa handing me something, and it's this big curved thing with a blade on the end. There's tall grass all around us, by the way. And then he hands me a stone, and he says, hey, I'll be back and pick you up in a little while. I didn't trust him on that one. But it's like you pull the thing to you. You ever use one, Chris? Oh, you're a farmer, man. You get the picture? It's a tool to cut things down. It's sharp. And that's the picture that the Scriptures give us of the judgment of how this great cup of the wrath of God that is being filled up, now we see what it's being filled up with, the wrath of God against the beast and the loyalists to the beast. 14 through 16 describes a grain harvest. 17 through 20 describes the grape harvest in terms that are almost, if it weren't in the Bible, you wouldn't even want to mention them. So the angel, verse 19, swung his sickle across the earth and gathered the grape harvest of the earth, threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood flowed from the winepress as high as a horse's bridle for 1,600 stadia. Thank God we didn't have to have that in flannel graph stories growing up, right? That's something you want to read and you want to get away from. I don't know. What's it do for us, though? Somebody's pretty serious, aren't they? Isn't somebody pretty sobered? There's an offense, there's something wrong, and it will not stay wrong. It will be made right. We can flippantly say, I believe in heaven, I believe in hell. It's not flippant at all. This is incredibly sobering. This is incredibly sad that there is coming a day. So note the picture. God is at work. Lift the curtain up. See what's going on in the presence of God on Mount Zion. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 22 and 23 help us understand Mount Zion. It is the city of the living God. It's the heavenly Jerusalem. It's where His firstborn in heaven reside. The redeemed who have died are safe and they're singing. The gospel is empowered and transforming lives, that first angel. Even in the midst of the war, the angel is going around with the gospel. The dragon's system is doomed. It's defeated. It's falling apart as we speak, as powerful as it yet is. And it will have a great revival of power the closer it gets to the end. The winepress of God's final wrath is being prepared. That's almost like the noise in the workshop that you hear in the backdrop every day that we live. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. Blessing, rest, and reward are assured for all who die in the Lord from now on. And the sickles of judgment are being sharpened because the harvest is just around the corner. So there's two symbols to etch the reality of judgment into our imaginations. It's the wine and the winepress, the grapes poured in, crushed, out comes the juice. And then the harvest, the picture of the sickle of God in the hand of an angel, in the hand of Jesus Himself, bringing to judgment all of those who are loyal to the beast. There's two symbols to etch the reality of safety with God, what we have in Christ, in His presence in heaven. And those two that we need to remember are rest and reward. And folks, one of the admonitions this morning is, let's live our lives in such a way that when we do get there, we will need what? Rest. This side of the curtain isn't intended for that. This side of the curtain's a war. That side of the curtain for the follower of Jesus is both rest and reward. On your notes inserted in the bulletin, there's 2 therefores. I'm going to add one, but let's do them. Let's do our therefores as we prepare our hearts to come to the table. Therefore, number 1, after seeing these visions, after being exposed to them, here it is, endure. Hang in there. Don't be deceived. Don't give in to deceit. Don't give in to weariness. Don't give in to loneliness. Don't give in. Don't. All right? This whole concept of encouraging one another until the day. It is a huge matter of endurance. Because the more loyal you are to Christ, the more it's going to cost. The more hard decisions you have to make about how you relate to this world system. Whether it's parents deciding where and how to educate their kids, whether it's a dad deciding what kind of a job to take because he really wants to spend time with his wife and kids and being the main discipler of his family, whether it's where you're going to spend your money, whether it's where you're going to live, what kind of movies are you going to watch, what kind of music what are you going to let into your mind and heart? It's a war. Hang in there. You will fall, you will be hurt, you will be set back, but here's the message. Here is a call. You now know what's going on. You are being impacted and influenced by a defeated foe. Endure. Here is a call for the endurance and faith of the saints. So as you take the cup this morning, will you consciously, as you participate in the blood and the body of Jesus, as you refresh your faith and commitment to Him, will you in your heart promise again to be an encourager to each other? To be someone who will come alongside. I want to endure, and I want to help the people in my community of faith endure. Been there, done that. Those who are going through it, I want to reach out to them. I want to be there. I want to pray. I want to be there for them. I want to encourage. Endurance is huge. The second, therefore, is be wise. Be wise. Be sober-minded. Be careful. Be calculating. Don't be fooled by the lies of the brand of this incredibly complex world system. Notice chapter 13, verse 18. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who is understanding calculate. And so perhaps this morning it might be as you participate in the table, you would cry out to God again, oh God, help me. I need wisdom. Will you give me, by your Spirit, the grace to be able to do the math of what's really happening in my world right now? There's battles on so many fronts. I'm afraid of so much. I'm concerned about so much. Oh God, help me be able to do the math. Then a third, therefore, that's not on your notes, but I just want to encourage you this morning. Repent and believe. Here's that angel in chapter 14, that angel with an eternal gospel to proclaim. Fear God and give Him glory. We're going to participate in the Lord's table as we conclude. It really is an incredible way. You know what we're doing, folks? We're publicly testifying our brand. This is who we're loyal to. It's Him. Of all the battle that's going on out there, of all that the dragon, in all of his redness and all of his heads, and the beast from the earth, the beast from the sea, they're out there, you know. I'm not making this up. This isn't Marvel stuff. This isn't Disney stuff. They're right behind the curtain, just a couple floors up or down. They're there. And they have a plan for your life, and they have a strategy to keep you dull. They have a strategy to get you distracted. They have a strategy, all kinds of strategies, for you and me to just cover up the grandeur and the majesty and the glories of Jesus somehow in our lives. And so we come. We come and we sip the cup, and we partake of the body. And here's what we're saying. This is my mark. You tell me I can't do this and I'll die. You tell me I have to be separate from Jesus and I will give it up. I can't do it. He is that real. We're at war today. And it's not a war for our country. That pales in significance to the war that we fight here at the table. I don't mean to be disrespectful by that, but it does. It's a war for your heart. It's a war for your affections. It's a war for your loyalty. And we come to the table to express again. So that's why the Apostle Paul says, come carefully, because you don't want to drink judgment on yourself. You need to inspect. You need to think, is this what I'm doing? Is it like I'm signing up all over again? And it is. I'm going to ask those who said that they would help serve this morning, if you'd come sit on the front. I'm going to lead in prayer. Can we go to that last? All right, if we could just keep that slide up there, please, while we do the table. Let's bow together. And would you